glasses echoed through the garden like a soft warning bell. Designer shoes dug into manicured grass, laughter rose in little waves, and the air carried that uncomfortable weight, the kind you can't name but feel pressing down on your chest. Isla didn't belong here. At least, not in their eyes. She stood near the table lined with finger foods, her fingers gently wrapped around a glass of lemonade, because she didn't drink, not anymore. Her dress was plain. A soft blue cotton summer dress she bought off clearance. Not silk. Not embroidered. Not what the others were wearing. Why did she even come? Her sister hissed. Not quietly enough. Isla froze. The lemon stung her tongue as she took a slow sip, pretending she hadn't heard. She's not really one of us, her sister added, a mocking tilt in her voice. The words didn't hurt like knives. They were worse. They were truths she'd tasted before, truths that had grown familiar. But she smiled politely and placed her drink down, turning slowly. Her sister, Alina, was surrounded by cousins in heels and laughter. Their bracelets jingled like wind chimes, sweet to others, grating to Isla. She met Alina's eyes. I heard you, Isla said simply, not in anger. Just fact. Alina blinked, startled she'd been caught, but smirked anyway. Well, it's not like I was wrong. The others chuckled, a little unsure, eyes darting back and forth like they were watching a tennis match of decency. Before Isla could respond, a voice rose behind her. A man clearing his throat. Everyone turned. The host of the event, Mr. Bryson, held a crystal glass high above his head, standing atop the small staircase that led to the indoor ballroom. This reunion, he announced, only exists because of one person. Murmurs rose. Isla's heart paused. Her mouth went dry. She doesn't know it yet, Bryson continued, smiling softly, but the reason we are gathered here today, the reason this family isn't bankrupt, the reason we still have this estate, is all because of Isla.
Gasps.
Audible.
Loud.
Sharp. Alina dropped her champagne flute. The glass didn't shatter. It bounced on the grass like even the earth refused to let the moment be ruined by noise. Mr. Bryson pointed toward Isla. She made a sacrifice 3 years ago that none of you know about. One that saved all of us. You call her not one of you. His voice was calm but carried steel beneath it. She's the best of you. Alina opened her mouth, but no words came. Isla's hands trembled. Not with anger, not with pride, but with a slow, almost aching pulse of finally being seen. The silence after Bryson's words was deafening. It spread across the lawn like fog, seeping into everyone's carefully kept appearances. Isla didn't move. Not at first. Every eye had turned to her, yet she stood still, as if the wrong movement would shatter the fragile truth hanging in the air. Alina was the first to speak. What does he mean? Her voice cracked, suddenly small. What sacrifice? Isla didn't answer. Bryson stepped down the stairs and walked toward the stunned group, his gaze scanning each face. 3 years ago, the family business was on the brink of collapse. You all remember the failed acquisition? The lawsuits? The debts? Heads nodded. But what none of you knew, he continued, stopping beside Isla, was that someone stepped in when the rest of you ran. Someone took out a personal loan, backed by her own tiny home and savings, and covered the legal costs. Quietly, anonymously. That person was Isla. A gasp escaped Isla's aunt's lips. Alina's face twisted. That's impossible. Isla didn't have that kind of money. She was working retail. She didn't have the money, Bryson corrected. She borrowed it. Risked everything she had. I don't believe this, Alina said quickly, her voice rising, eyes darting toward the cousins. Why wouldn't she say anything? Isla finally stepped forward. Because I didn't do it for thanks, or to be included in your wine-soaked brunches or gossip rings. I did it because, despite how you all made me feel, this family mattered to me. At least, the memory of what it used to be did. Her voice didn't tremble. It was warm. Sad, maybe, but not weak. One of the cousins, a quiet one, Emma, spoke up. Wait, was it your house that was sold? Isla nodded. You said you moved into a rental by choice. Another nod. The family stared, faces drained of color. And then, unexpectedly, a slow clap started. From the corner. It was her Uncle Thomas, the black sheep of the older generation. He'd always been half forgotten, always reading, always observing. While we were sipping champagne and gossiping about who had a better dress, he said, still clapping, "This girl saved our name." More claps followed. A few slow at first. Then faster.
Genuine.
Real. Alina's eyes welled with tears, but Isla didn't want pity. Not now. Because this was not about revenge. It was about truth. And truth was heavier than vengeance. But it freed her far more. The applause eventually faded, but its echo remained in every look Isla received. She didn't know what to do with the attention. She wasn't used to being seen. Not like this. Not with admiration. Most of her life, she'd been the quiet one at the edge of every photo, cropped out of conversations and memories both. But today, for the first time, they couldn't look away. Still, the ache in her chest didn't leave. Kindness couldn't erase years of being unseen. It couldn't undo the moments she stood at doorways holding gifts no one opened. It couldn't unhear the whispers Alina never meant for her to hear. Mr. Bryson gently touched her shoulder. There's something else. Isla looked at him, confused. There's more? He nodded and handed her a small envelope. It was cream-colored, thick, sealed with red wax bearing the family crest, an ivy branch wrapped around a sword.
She recognized it.
This was the kind of letter reserved for bloodline matters, estate transitions, heirlooms, legacy transfers. She blinked. What is this? Your grandfather left this for you. Specifically for you. It was to be given only when the family gathered in full. Her heart tripped. He passed 2 years ago.
Yes.
And he knew this day would come. He arranged for it. Isla turned the envelope over slowly, hands trembling slightly as she broke the wax seal. The silence was so thick it nearly had weight. Every eye on that lawn, sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles, watched her. She unfolded the thick paper. To Isla, my quiet legacy. If they're reading this to you now, it means the others finally see what I saw long ago. Your fire beneath still waters. She swallowed. Hard. I chose you, Isla, not because you shouted the loudest or stood in spotlights, but because you were the only one who listened, who acted. When the company failed, and your father and uncles bickered and ran, it was you who stood at my side. No cameras. No praise. Just loyalty. Heart. This estate, our ancestral home, is yours now. A loud gasp broke from somewhere behind her, but she kept reading. Don't give it back to them, not out of pity or peacekeeping. Let them earn your forgiveness, not your silence. Lead with the strength they never understood in you. This house is yours to restore, or to walk away from forever. But either way, remember, you were always more than enough. With pride, grandfather. The letter fell slightly in her hands, fingertips numb, her heart hammering. The estate? Hers? The shock had only just begun to ripple through the crowd. Her Uncle Dean stepped forward, mouth parting like a man who had something to say, but had never practiced humility before. Isla, this must be a mistake. That letter was hand-delivered. Bryson interrupted, his voice calm but firm. Kept in our law office vault with strict instructions. Isla is now the sole owner of the property, as well as 75% of the remaining family shares. Isla blinked. 75%? Her father, who had never once stood up for her at any family dinner, was pale, like someone had pulled the ground from under him. Her mother had a wine glass half raised, now shaking as she lowered it. Alina's mouth moved, but no words came. Alina finally managed. You can't be serious. Isla met her sister's eyes for the first time without shrinking. I didn't ask for any of this, she said, voice quiet but solid. But I'm not giving it back just to make you feel better. But you're not even. Alina bit her lip before finishing the sentence. Not even what? Not even family? Not even worthy? Not even wanted? I'm exactly what this family needed. Isla said. Even if none of you saw it, the silence was thick, but it didn't hurt anymore. Isla wasn't outside the room anymore. She was the room, and the door had finally opened for her to decide who got to stay. That night, Isla sat alone on the edge of the grand balcony that wrapped around the second floor of the estate. The golden lights of the garden below flickered as the last of the reunion guests quietly trickled out, too stunned to gossip, too shaken to pretend. The wine had run dry, but so had the cruelty. For the first time, it was silent in the most peaceful way. She wrapped her cardigan tightly around her shoulders as the wind rolled over her skin. Everything that happened earlier kept replaying in her head: Bryson's announcement, the letter, the inheritance, the expressions. Especially Alina's. Not of jealousy, but disbelief. Isla had spent her life standing just outside of love. She was included by name, but not by heart. Her father praised Alina. Her mother echoed it. Family vacations didn't have space for her. Family photos always had her on the edge.
But now?
Now she owned the house they used to keep her out of. She heard footsteps. Turning slowly, she found Alina standing a few feet away, her heels off, her expensive dress slightly wrinkled, her mascara smudged from the crying she'd tried to do in private. They stared at each other. I didn't know, Alina said first, voice hoarse. I didn't know, Isla. You didn't ask. Alina looked away. I thought you were just, she trailed off.
What?
Bitter? Lonely? A burden? Alina's face cracked. I thought you were overreacting. That you liked being alone. No one likes being erased, Alina. You just convinced yourselves I enjoyed the silence because it made it easier for you not to include me. Her sister took a deep breath, eyes glistening in the soft moonlight. I didn't realize how invisible we made you feel. Isla didn't say anything.
She didn't have to.
The weight of those years had already settled in Alina's shoulders. Then came a whisper. But you still came, Alina said.
To the reunion.
Even after everything. I came, Isla said, because despite everything, a part of me always hoped someone would finally look at me and see more than a placeholder. Alina's face folded in grief, not anger. I'm sorry, she whispered. Isla studied her for a long moment. I'm not here to humiliate you, Isla said gently. Or to take things just because I can. That's not who I am. Alina blinked, confused. But this house, this responsibility, it's mine now. And I'll protect it. That doesn't mean I'll shut everyone out. But I won't shrink anymore just to make others comfortable. She paused, then added, You made me feel small for most of my life. But today, I found out I was the one holding everything together. Alina looked away, ashamed. Can I help? She asked suddenly. Help with what? Fixing things. Making this house feel like a home again. For everyone. Isla stared. Her heart didn't soften instantly. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was real life. And real forgiveness took time. But maybe the first step wasn't about forgetting the past. Maybe it was about rebuilding from it. Start by coming inside, Isla said finally. We'll talk. No cameras. No show. Just sisters. Alina nodded, eyes misty. They stepped inside the estate, one that had been rebuilt once by sacrifice. And maybe, this time, by grace. Morning came with golden sunlight draping the estate like a blessing. The walls, once cold and echoing with formality, now seemed to breathe differently, as if the truth that had finally been spoken had stripped away years of silent resentment and icy politeness. Isla stood in the hallway outside the study, holding a mug of coffee with both hands. She hadn't slept.
She didn't need to.
Something inside her had shifted, and sleep felt irrelevant compared to the weight of what lay ahead. Ownership wasn't just a title, it was responsibility. And in this family, responsibility had never been shared fairly. It had always been traded behind closed doors, passed between the powerful, and never offered to those who stood quietly at the margins. Until now. The study door was slightly ajar. She stepped inside. Stacks of old financial documents lay on the grand oak desk, still where her grandfather had left them in his final months. There was a dusty leather notebook in the corner, and nestled inside it was a handwritten list of names, charities, former employees, community projects that her grandfather had supported secretly, without fanfare. Isla traced her fingers over them.
She understood now.
She wasn't just inheriting a house or stock percentages. She was inheriting values. The kind of values that weren't praised at family dinners but whispered between the good souls who kept things running behind the scenes. There was a knock at the door. She turned. Her father. He hadn't said a word to her since the announcement. He had spent most of the evening in the East Wing library, pacing, as if trying to rewrite his own memories. Now he looked different. Smaller. Like a man who had finally realized how little he truly knew. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the room. Isla nodded. He stepped in but didn't sit. His hands were folded behind his back, posture stiff.
He had always been a proud man.
Too proud, maybe. And pride is a hard thing to swallow when the world you built on ego starts to crumble. "I wanted to apologize," he said, voice quieter than she'd ever heard it. She didn't reply. I didn't know everything you had done. What you gave up. I assumed." He shook his head.
No.
"I didn't assume. I didn't care enough to ask." Isla looked at him. "And now, I care," he said without hesitation. "Not just because of what you've inherited. Not because of power. But because I finally see who you are. And I'm ashamed it took public embarrassment for me to notice the strength you carried alone all these years." He paused, taking a breath. "I know I have no right to ask this, but will you let me help? With the estate. With rebuilding. Even if it's just the groundskeeping. I want to do something useful. For you." Isla stared at him for a long time. She remembered how many birthdays he'd skipped. How many Christmases she'd spent in the corner while he toasted Alina's scholarships. But now, his eyes weren't full of excuses. They were full of regret. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth something. She nodded slowly. "If you want help, start by speaking to the staff. Learn their names. Listen to them. Respect them. That's what Grandpa did." He bowed his head slightly. "I will." Later that day, Isla stood before the family. She'd called them back to the main hall, not for confrontation, but for clarity. "I'm not removing anyone from the property," she announced. "No one is being exiled. No one is being punished. But things will change." They were silent, waiting. From this day on, this estate will no longer run on titles or bloodlines. If you want a voice here, you'll earn it through contribution, through service, through community, not gossip, not inheritance. Murmurs stirred. This house will open its doors to more than just cocktail parties and hollow reunions. There are families in this town who go hungry, students with no books, women rebuilding their lives with nothing but hope. This estate will serve them. Aunt Margot blinked in shock. "You want to turn it into a charity?" "No," Isla said calmly. "I want to turn it into a home. One that means something." The cousins exchanged glances, unsure how to respond. But behind them, Emma, the quiet cousin who'd always sat beside Isla at the kids' table, stepped forward. "I want to help," she said. "Whatever you need." Then came Uncle Thomas.
Me too.
"It's about time we made this place count." One by one, the murmurs became voices. And the voices became pledges. Not everyone joined in. Alina stood at the back, arms folded. She hadn't spoken since their conversation on the balcony. But Isla caught her eyes, and in them, saw something she hadn't before. Not jealousy. Respect. And that was enough. Months passed. The estate slowly transformed, not physically at first, but in spirit. Locals were welcomed in for workshops, gardens were open to school programs, and a forgotten reading room was converted into a women's shelter resource space. And every Friday night, in the same backyard where Isla had once overheard her sister mocking her, they held community dinners. No guest lists. No ranks. Just long tables, shared meals, and laughter that echoed all the way to the gates. One evening, Alina sat beside her, handing out plates. "You really did it," she said softly. "You changed everything." Isla smiled, watching kids run barefoot through the grass where champagne glasses once clinked.
No, she said.
I just reminded everyone what family is supposed to look like. And in that moment, she knew the best revenge wasn't about proving them wrong.